We put a graphic up at the start where they had struggled against the teams down near the bottom. It might be
Newcastle, West Brom, Fulham, Brighton, and now Burnley.
Yeah, and that's not a good sign either. You know, if you can only get yourself up for the big games, you won't win the league. You know, you win leagues because you bang at it every time you go out and cross the white line. Now, they could go on a run in these next 6 games, beat all the big teams that they're going to play, and they're very much bang on it. But you'd have to go back to the start of the season. You know, was it 7 goals they conceded at Aston Villa?
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you can lose a game, but to lose by 7. I look at this group of players, and what Jamie said earlier, they have been superb. They've been fantastic. The one thing you would say about this group of players over the last 2 years, their consistency has been off the charts. They've been absolutely magnificent. They've been able to get themselves to where they needed to be to win games, big games, teams near the bottom, and they've been fantastic. This is not just a slight blip. This is a real dip en masse of the players in that dressing room. And how you get back on the horse and get going again, I'm not quite sure. There's not an old group of players. This is a group of players that has a nice mix of experience and youth. And it's the drop in quality is enormous that we're seeing.
And from what you look at it, Tom, you talk about the problems that they've had from the start of the season, losing Virgil van Dijk, losing Joe Gomez in that same position, and then losing Diogo Jota, who started his Liverpool career with such promise. Do you think that's affected the way this team has been able to kick on?
I think it can affect your rhythm a little bit. You know, people talk about being champions and then retaining it's even tougher and getting that sort of momentum again. You know, I picked up on what Jamie said there. You know, I remember sort of last season at Villa Park, obviously the season before this one, you know, we were winning 1-0 with 10 minutes to go and there was a relentless mentality there. They were coming, and they ended up beating us 2-1 that day. And I think if they can get back to that sort of high tempo, you know, that relentless sort of idea that they've got with and without the ball, it'll probably be closer to where they were last season compared to this season. But for me, you always get moments where, you know, they might have come off it a little bit at the minute, but there's no panic. You've just got to get back to what took you there. And for me, I think, as I see it tonight from my view, it's just a tempo for me. I think it's a tempo with and without it.
Getting there is hard enough. To win it is hard enough. But then all of a sudden you go from an emerging team and you've got over the line to a team that the expectation is enormous. It's on your shoulders. You're expected to win every game you play. And Liverpool, quite rightly so, in the last few years have had tremendous plaudits. You know, they've been fabulous to watch. They got me on the edge of my seat. They played with aggression. The midfield bullied opposition in the correct way. The front three were sparkling. You know, when it's all continuing and got the goalkeeper and got Van Dijk, and all of a sudden they've gone from a nearly team to the real deal, and they've won a couple of big trophies. But the drop-off on where they were last year, with the consistency and the speed and aggression and everything else that you need at the highest level, it's not been there this year. You know, this. It's easy to say it's been coming, but they've been sloppy. And I come back to, as a manager, you only really find out what you've got when you find yourself in this situation. So you're going to be looking closely at those big players in that dressing room and see what he's going to get in the next half a dozen games.
Jamie Graeme says he's not quite sure where he's going to find that spark from. He doesn't have too long to find it with Manchester United looming again this weekend. Would you have any suggestions as to what he can do selection-wise or tactically?
Well, he's changed it up tonight, hasn't he? And we know there is a big drop-off in the backup play, certainly in attacking areas for Liverpool, and hence why Liverpool's front three play so often. This was something we highlighted on Monday Night Football, really. I think Diogo Jota has been a huge miss for Liverpool, and that's something that, you know, we keep looking at the players, but also you look at the manager and the teams he picks at certain times, and the fact he played in a dead rubber. I think in the Champions League, I think it's frustration that he got injured in that game. I know people say you can get injured in training, it can happen at any time, but Liverpool wrapped the Champions League group up early and then, lose one of the key players, certainly at the start of the season, in a game that didn't matter too much. I mean, they also were a very strong team out against Aston Villa's, youth team virtually, and then that means that maybe Salah and Firmino on the bench. So obviously it's the team, the manager, the setup, the formation. Everyone at this moment are going to have questions thrown at them, and no one ever gets it perfectly right, even when you're at your absolute best. But at this moment, this Liverpool team are a shadow of what they've been in the last 3 or 4 years. And Graham knows this better than anyone. Gary mentioned on Monday Night Football as well. Normally, after 3 or 4 years, there is a sort of a moving on. really, if you like. I mentioned about Roberto Firmino on Monday night, and very rarely do you see the same players playing week in, week out. And you actually go back to, I think, the Champions League final, Liverpool lost to Real Madrid. If you look at Liverpool's team that night, it's still the team today, really, with one or two exceptions, really. Certainly the 10 outfield players, I think you'd say, Fabinho's come in, but it's still the same front three. It's still virtually the same back four. It's still Wijnaldum and Henderson in midfield. So there's only really been one addition, you'd say, is a nailed-on start in Liverpool's first 11 when everyone's fit, really, out of the 10 outfield players. So that shows how much those players have done for this club in those 3 or 4 years, the intensity at the player. And, between now and the end of the season, they need to make sure they get Champions League qualification before they think of anything else. And then obviously see what the club and the manager do in the summer. But there will be frustration here, from Liverpool supporters. They wanted to retain that title. It looks like it's slipping away. There's still half a season to go. So I'm sure what this team have been described by the manager's mentality monsters. And that is a fitting description of what this team have done in the last 3 or 4 years. But they've got to really show it, and maybe more, really, in the second half of the season if they've got any way of, clawing that deficit they've given the two Manchester clubs back now.